It all started when I found a box in the attic filled with old letters. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, just sitting there like it held some dark secret. And when I finally opened it, I saw that they were addressed to me. But that couldn't be right because this handwriting, I recognized it instantly. It was mine, only I hadn't written these letters myself. The date on the envelope was 20 years ago, and I clearly remembered writing them. I was so shocked. How could I have written these letters and sent them to myself? Was it some kind of sick joke? But the handwriting was definitely mine, and even the paper was the same kind that I used back then. And what was with the address? There was no such street in any of the cities I had lived in. It was like it didn't belong to any reality. I remember the first letters were weird. They were like notes from some kid who was just making stuff up. Nothing made sense. It was all gibberish. Just random words. Then suddenly things got real. They mentioned things that only I knew about. Details from my life. It was creepy. It described the rooms of my apartment, the squeaky floorboard near the entrance, how the sun hit the carpet at a certain angle. It even talked about the smell of old books and how the curtains used to be drawn during the day. It was driving me crazy. And then one day I got a letter with a photograph attached. It was an old house that looked exactly like the one from my childhood. But what really caught my attention was the dark figure in the background. It looked like me. It was me. Why did I live in that house? What was that place? I knew I had to go there. So a few days later, I took a train to the town the letters had come from. The place itself looked normal, like any other small town. I asked locals about the house, but nobody knew anything. Apparently it had been torn down years ago, and when I walked around, I found a spot where the house had stood. There was nothing there now, just an empty lot full of weeds and bricks. But I could feel a strange pull, like something was waiting for me. So I stepped closer to the house, and suddenly the air turned ice cold. I heard a whisper dot my name. At first it was quiet, just barely audible, but then it got louder. It was coming from all around me. I looked around, but there was no one there. But deep down, I could feel that someone was watching me. When I stepped onto the remains of the foundation, the house appeared before my eyes. Whole, just like in the photograph, the same one that I had seen in the vision. I hesitated for a moment, and then I stepped inside. The door swung shut behind me with a loud bang. I wasn't sure why I had done that, but inside everything was just like in the letters. The rooms were empty, dark, with creaking floorboards and the smell of rot and old books. Every detail matched the letters perfectly. Then I noticed an envelope lying on a table. It was addressed to me. I opened it quickly. Inside was a photograph. I stood by a window, and behind me was a figure wearing my clothes. It had hollow eyes. And then I heard footsteps in the corridor. I turned around, but I was alone. I wanted to leave, but the doors vanished as if they had never been there. Letters started appearing on their own, floating in the air, pushed under the door. Wedged between the floorboards, all of them were written in my handwriting. All of them were dated in the future, and all of them predicted what I would do next. I tried to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. Suddenly, figures started appearing in the darkness. They were shadows that resembled me. But their faces were distorted, and they grinned like monsters. They moved in unison, whispering words I had never said. They followed me everywhere, always keeping a safe distance. I tried to run away, but the house was twisting and warping. Corridors stretched on forever. Staircases led to nowhere. Finally, I ended up in a room with a huge mirror. In the reflection, I didn't see myself, but the person who had written the letters. My double. He was smiling. He looked at me and whispered, "You came. Now you'll stay." I shut my eyes tightly, and when I opened them, I was outside, standing on the empty lot. But inside I knew I had never left. I was trapped there forever. Every step I take, every move I make is predicted by those letters that I'm forced to write. I've become part of this story that is written in my own handwriting, and there is no way out. This happened years ago, and it still continues today. Every morning when I wake up, I write a letter. It's like something is pushing me to do it. And in those letters, I predict my own actions, thoughts, and feelings for the rest of the day. It's a never-ending story that keeps calling me back to that house. And sometimes when I read those letters, I can still hear his voice whispering in my ear.